श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा. So thank you all very much for joining today's session. We have been discussing from Bhakti Loka, which is a collection of essays by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, written on the 6 favorable and the 6 unfavorable items for one's progress on the path of devotional service, based on the 2nd and 3rd verse of Upadeshamrita by Srila Goswami. So in that, we are currently in the 9th essay, Utsahan Nischayat Dhairyat. So last week we started discussing about Dhairya, which essentially can be understood as the ability to tolerate the urges, the 6 urges, or patience. So they are definitely very much connected. But anyways, before we continue the discussion, I will request Radha Pramod Prabhu to do a recap of what we have seen till now. Then I will take the discussion from there forward. Over to you, Prabhu.
Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah. Hare Krishna. This is the topic of discussion, but before that we had some more discussions last time on 5 causes of success in an activity. Adhishtanam, Karta, Karanam, Cheshta, Daivam. There was a discussion on it, how for every activity there are 5 causes for success, and Adhishtanam is our body or place of action. Karta is identification. I need to identify I'm a teacher, I'm a doctor, or whatever. Then only we will be able to do that activity, and then we should have that senses also. In a certain level also we need to have that refined senses to perform that activity. After that there should be an endeavor, and then the important factor is also karma. Even some may endeavor, but if it is not in karma, then he may not get it. But if it is with less endeavor also, if it is there in his karma, he can achieve something. And if somebody endeavors so much, but if it is not in karma, he may not get it. So this factor of daivam is very important to understand. And now based on this only we had further discussion on, like if somebody is sick, should we go to a doctor or not? Or going to a doctor, is it a endeavor? Or going to astrologer is same as going to a doctor? So that was also a discussion. So going to a doctor is not challenging the faith, but going to astrology is challenging the faith and saying that Krishna is not in control of my life, but karma is in control. But going to a doctor, we are making some cheshta. That is not against the, we can make some endeavor, but it is not that we are not trusting. We know Krishna is in control and he wants me to make some endeavor, and if Krishna wants, it will happen. But going to astrologer means we are saying that karma is actually controlling my life, and then we want astrologer to help us with some graha dosha, this, that, and all. In that way, it is not favorable to go to an astrologer. We can go to doctor. It is not wrong. And then there is one more discussion on that the ability to tolerate is directly proportionate to advancement. If somebody is very advanced, he is able to tolerate all the situations which is going through. But if somebody is not advanced, then he may face little more difficulties. And like that. And then we had the next the topic of the discussion, this essay we discussed, where dhairya means to resist the 6 urges. Basically it is self-control, and also its patience means the ability to tolerate the urges and the ability to wait. We need to wait. And then 3 more things also. Of course there are many points, but I just jotted out some important. And why this happens? Due to lack of this quality, a man becomes restless. He's in situations he's not able to hold himself. And those who are impatient cannot do any work. And another thing is a practitioner controls first himself, then the whole world. Now, to make this understand, then what Bhaktivinoda Thakur does is he takes to the shloka of envoy, first shloka. Controlling oneself is what all things to be controlled. They are just vacho vegam, manasa krodha vegam, jishva vegam, udaropastha vegam, etan vegan yo vishaheta dhira, sarvam vipam pritimim sashishyat. Of course, in Miro, Balaram font does not come, so slokas come like this. Vacha vegam, they are just to speech, mind, anger, belly, tongue, and genitals. So here, if the speech is not regulated, the enmity arises from talking about others. So this is very important point we discussed on this. And then the practitioners of devotional service should not speak unnecessarily. There is maunavrata that is also advised, but that is not for devotees. That is for generally outsiders to perform tapasya, and they get tremendous benefit by practicing maunavratas. For devotees, for us, we not practice Maunavrata, but we should regulate and we should speak only topics related to Krishna. Besides topics regarding Krishna, all other topics are unnecessary. In that way, we do our Vachuvega. And then we had further discussion on two important topics. One is what are the types of anarthas. So we discussed there are 4 types of anarthas: Asat Trishna, Tattva Vibhrama, Hridaya Daurbalya, and Aparada. For Asat Trishna means thirst for material enjoyment, and that can be overcome when we follow the verse number 2 of Nectar of Instruction. Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo nimagraha janasangasya lollamcha shadbir bhakti vinashyati. And then for Tattva Vibhrama, there is a confusion or illusion about the conclusions of Shastras. We can overcome by remaining chaste to Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Then we have discussed about Hridaya Daurbalya, weakness of heart due to envy, pride, fault finding, and deceit. And for that, we follow the 4th verse of next Nectar of Instructions. Madhyadati pratighnati guhyamakyat puchati bhunche bodhiche java chadvidam priti lakshana. When the heart becomes filled with love, then we'll be able to give up all these conditionings, all these anarthas from the heart. So that is what was discussed. And then the 4th offense, 4th anartha is aparad, offenses, and for that we follow the first verse of Nectar of Instructions. Vacho vegam, manasa krodha vegam. If we are able to control them, we don't commit offenses. And then we had discussed about action and virtue. Like, should we cultivate the qualities, or because we don't have, so whether we should cultivate or not? So there is a discussion on it. Say, example, tolerance and humility. Now, they are also virtue. Virtue means like subduing by the mode of passion and ignorance. One develops this virtue, he will not get the urges. It already has, then he don't have urges. But now I have urge. So in that situation, what we should do? Then for that, in action, the application of the goal of life, appreciation for the goal of life. Like, I should be very clear about what is the goal of my life. If I am very clear, and by that understanding, it is favor. So this activity is favorable for my goal. So I will try to do it. Until one get virtue, one can make an endeavor, and one has a strong attachment for the purpose. Then he will make proper endeavor. So we're discussing example of air hostess. Like, she don't have the virtue of speaking polite or being kind or like that, but she knows I'll be paid for it if I act like that. So she is performing that activity because she is attached to the goal, that is her salary. Similarly, we know that these things are helpful for my Krishna consciousness, so I'll try to develop it. And eventually, once our mode of passion and ignorance are subdued, then we develop them and it becomes natural for us to do it. Like that. And then we had last one is Manasa Vegam, the urge of the mind. It is a duty of a sober person to tolerate the urge of mind. Rishis have propounded Ashtanga Yoga and Raja Yoga for it. Now, for devotees, we cannot do all these things. What we should do? The Lord's prescription is that one should regulate the mind from inferior taste by giving it higher taste. We need to give higher taste. So then there is a discussion on this, on spontaneous devotion. We want to spontaneously get attracted to Krishna, but now present situation is we are spontaneously doing sense gratification. How to overcome that? The present situation is there is a succumbing stage where to kill boredom we choose the option of sense gratification, which is not connected to Krishna. Now, to get Yukta Vairagya and spontaneous devotional service, there is one more stage which is very important. That is dovetailing. Dovetailing means what? We should engage ourselves in likable devotional service. In that way, because we are liking it, we are connecting ourselves to Krishna in that services. Not that, like, okay, if you are doing anything you like, then it is karma yoga. No, it is not like karma yoga. It is actually dovetailing our propensities, and in that way, slowly we'll develop Yukta Vairagya, and then we come to a stage of spontaneous devotional service from spontaneous sense gratification. So that was our discussion. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Very nice recap of what we saw last week. So, um, as Prabhuji very nicely summarized, dhairya essentially means to resist the six urges, and in that we discussed about vacho vegam, and we saw that how to resist the six urges. Uh, Eventually one certainly needs to. Only if one resists the six urges, then one can avoid the offenses, especially the urge to speak. So that's something that we saw. In that we saw how these four anarthas, essential anarthas, which Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about, asat trishna, tattva vibrama, aparadana, hriday their solution in nectar of instruction, each of those verses, we saw that. And we saw that how Mauna Vrata is not something that uh, uh, which is a means of uh, avoiding Vacho Vegam for devotees. They will have to develop the taste of sharing Krishna Katha with one another. That is the way they have to be, the urge to speak has regulated in that way. Anyways, and then we also, as Prabhuji summarized, we discussed about these qualities. Do we have to endeavor to develop them? Well, we saw that the endeavor to develop these qualities is to perform devotional service, because these qualities can be developed, because these are qualities which do not manifest with the prominence of Rajogun and Tamogun. When Rajogun and Tamogun is prominent, these qualities cannot manifest. By qualities, I mean virtue. But having said that, do we have to wait till the manifestation of these qualities to act in that way? That is not necessary. We don't have to get the virtue, we don't have to develop the virtue of humility to act humbly. We don't have to develop the virtue of tolerance to, to act tolerantly. Then we can act humbly, we can act tolerantly if we value the goal of our life. By seeing that how, by acting in this way, actually favorable for my progress on the path of devotional service, one can act in that way. So, but while doing that, the real endeavor to develop those qualities is the endeavor to properly practice devotional service. Because by practice of devotional service, tada rajastamo bhava kamalobhadayasche chetayete ranaviddam stam sattve prasiddhi. So only by practice of devotional service, the Rajogun and Tamogun are subdued and Sattvagun becomes prominent. And when Sattvagun becomes prominent, these good qualities develop and unfavorable qualities get subdued. So then, talking about Manasa Vegam, we saw that again, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, it is the duty of a sober person to tolerate the urge of the mind. So when you say duty, it means it's not a natural quality. So which means there has to be some endeavor to control the urge of the mind. Okay. So how do we control the urge of the mind? So this we very clearly understood. The urge of the mind can be controlled only through the senses. When senses are regulated, when senses get regular and regulated devotional engagements, then the mind gets the food through the senses. Mind gets the food through the senses. So therefore, when the mind is regulated, when the senses are regulated, then the mind gets somewhat subdued. So we were discussing on this theme that how we don't want mechanical devotional service, but many times we see that mechanical devotional service is the real problem in our practice of devotional service. But in one sense, actually the real problem for most of us may not be mechanical devotional service. It may be actually spontaneous sense gratification. And the means of transcending the stage of mechanical devotional service, the means of reaching spontaneous devotional service is to actually ensure that the stage of spontaneous sense gratification is overcome by practice of mechanical devotional service. Because mind can get attached to devotional service in a very spontaneous way only if the senses are constantly providing Krishna conscious vasanas or impressions. So while the senses are constantly providing Krishna conscious impressions, and before the mind gets attached is the stage of mechanical devotional service only. So mechanical devotional service, because the word mechanical sounds very incorrect. Mechanical sounds, it definitely has a negative connotation. So instead of mechanical devotional service, I would say dutiful devotional service. Okay. Dutiful devotional service, instead of, if mechanical sounds very odd, one can say beautiful devotional service. Dutiful devotional service will eventually lead gradually the mind getting attached, then it will lead to the realm of spontaneous devotional service. So the dual devotional service is actually the stage of dovetailing. Of course, you can say dutiful devotional service is dovetailing. Succumbing stage is the stage of, you can say like Vishaya Sangara, always succumbing to sense gratification. Dovetailing is the stage of dutiful devotional service. Yukta Vairagya is the stage of detached devotional service. Spontaneous devotional and Bhava Bhakti is the stage of spontaneous devotional service. So you cannot go to the stage of detached devotional service without practicing dutiful devotional service. And without practicing detached devotional service, we cannot come to the stage of spontaneous devotional service. So these are stages. You cannot skip a stage. We cannot actually go from the succumbing stage to the stage of Yukta Vairagya. So these are some of the points that we discussed last week. Before we continue this discussion on Dhairya, where we have been discussing about Manasa Vegam, the urge of the mind. If there are any quick discussion points, comments, questions based on what we discussed last week and summarized today, we can take before we continue this discussion. So there is a question in the chat box. We will take that question first, and then in the meantime, this will give time for the devotees to think and formulate their questions and raise their hand. So in the meantime, there are two questions in the chat box. First is, can you kindly tell what is Karma Yoga? I mean, I am sure the question is essentially how is it different from bhakti? So if say that if I doing likable devotional service is not karma yoga, then what is karma yoga? So karma yoga means, so I will just write it down. Uh, just to differentiate between what is karma yoga and what is bhakti yoga. Okay, just give me 1 second. I will just pen is too thin. I will just adjust the thickness of my pen. Give me just 1 second. I will quickly do it, and then we will continue this discussion. I thought I did it, but somehow it got readjusted. Okay, so let me share. Okay, so let me differentiate between uh, uh, karma yoga and bhakti. Okay, so I will just write it down here. Okay, so this is karma yoga and this is bhakti yoga. Okay, so what are the activities performed? Okay, so activities performed in karma yoga are varnashrama activities. Activities according to one's varna and ashrama. And activities performed in bhakti yoga are ninefold devotional service. Okay, and what is the pramana? Okay, what is the source of evidence based on which they perform these activities? The evidence is Dharma Shastra. Okay, and the evidence here is Bhakti Shastra. Okay, so and what is the result of ultimate result of karma yoga? I mean, by karma yoga, I am assuming we are talking about Nishkama Karma Yoga. The ultimate result is purification of heart. Okay, and the ultimate result here uh, uh, is actually Krishna Prema. Okay, and another thing, another difference between Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga is that Karma Yoga is practiced on the platform of false ego. Bhakti is practiced on the platform of true ego. Okay. Why do I say Karma Yoga is practiced on the platform of false ego? Whole Varna and Ashrama designation is not the designation of the soul, it is the designation of the body only. I am a Brahmana, I am a Kshatriya, I am a Brahmachari, I am a Shudra. These are all bodily designations. So Karma Yoga is practiced on the platform of false ego, and Bhakti Yoga is practiced on the platform of true ego. At the beginning only we understand Gopi Bhartur Padakamalayor Das Dasan Das. Okay. And Karma Yoga is the paradigm of practice of Karma Yoga is Dharmasya Sankalpo Dharmasya Varjanam. Whatever is dharma, I will accept. Whatever is adharma, I will reject. But practice of Bhakti Yoga is Anukulyasya Sankalpo. Whatever is favorable for Bhakti, whatever is favorable for pleasing Krishna, I will accept, and Pratikulyasya Varjanam. Okay. So, therefore, there is a significant difference. You cannot say that if someone performs a devotional activity of his choice, that is Karma Yoga. That is not the right understanding, actually. That is not at all the right understanding. Because there is a big difference between practice of Karma Yoga and Bhakti. It is not the same at all. So, first thing, this was the first question. Can you tell what does Karma Yoga mean? Is the answer for that question clear? And then I will go to the next question. Okay. So the next question is: my parents took my Kundali or birth chart to an astrologer, seeing that he told that I will do Bhakti in future. Can astrologers predict these things? Well, see, one thing we have to see Krishna's plan. We have to see Krishna's plan. See, Krishna has the responsibility to protect the faith of the devotee also, and Krishna has the responsibility to protect the faith of the astrologer also. So if Krishna desires to protect the faith of the astrologer, he may allow the astrologer to predict these things also. So there may be some indications which does it mean an astrologer will always be able to predict it? Not necessarily. It is not necessary that an astrologer will always be able to predict it, but an astrologer may be able to predict it also, because his faith in Asti also has to be protected, because that is also a proper Vedic science. Is the answer for this question relevant, clear? Okay. Let's move on to the next question. Did you say that without following detached devotional service, one cannot get the spontaneous devotional service? Detached devotional service is Yukta Vairagya. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagyam Uchyate. What is the beginning of that verse? Anasaktasya Vishayan Yatarham Upayunjatah Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagyam Uchyate. Anasaktasya Vishayan means not having attachment to enjoying that object or that service. So therefore, that is detached devotional service only. So unless one practices Yukta Vairagya, one cannot come to the stage of spontaneous devotional service. Yeah, not possible. Is it okay, bro? Shall we move on to the next question? Ramacharya Prabhu, is that okay? Can you type on the chat box and let me know? Okay, maybe he's typing something. Let's move on to the next question. In the meantime, let him formulate it in. What is the limit of tolerating urges by endeavor? There is endless disturbance and securities. Well, true. There may be different endeavors which have different amount of potencies to help one tolerate the urges. So, like, for example, association of devotees and good, favorable engagement. There are so many things by which, each one of them add value or empower us little bit more and more and more to tolerate the urges. So, okay, I have a particular limit to tolerate my urges. Well, do you have the best of association? how good is your sadhana, how gainfully are you engaged, how much you are liking your engagement. So all these things, each of these things add, uh, uh, empower us to various degrees to develop the higher taste by which we can control our urges. So controlling our urges depends on how nicely we are fencing ourselves, how much we are endeavoring to keep our senses away from the sense objects, and also how fully we are trying to give alternative engagement to the senses, and how nicely, what kind of association we have got. It depends on all these factors. So anyways, Ruchi Mataji, you wanted to follow up on this question?
Yes. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Nice joining you after a long time. Prabhuji, my question is that I have, in this case of toleration, I have a personal experience in my life. Like you, there was a small street brawl. My vehicle hit another person's vehicle. So when I was trying to be more tolerant and adjusting, and I was trying to control my urge, I just found the other person, was turning out to be more demanding and unnecessarily aggressive, which provoked me also to take a slightly firmer stand. So sometimes when we are trying to control our urge and when we are trying to really discipline ourselves, what I find is other people try to take undue advantage. What has to be done in such a situation, if you could suggest?
Like Narada Muni says that we hear this story, right? He told snake, I told you not to bite, but I never told you not to hiss. So when the snake became very docile and non-aggressive, people started beating the snake and disturbing it. So the Narada Muni said, I told uh, not to bite people, but I never told you not to hiss and shoo them away. So that one can always do.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. There is another question in the chat box. Aren't the planets carrying the will of Krishna and obeying him? Planets are indirectly carrying the will of Krishna according to the law of karma for those who are not devotees. That is the understanding. Planets are carrying the will of Krishna indirectly through the law of karma for those who are not practicing pure devotional service. So this is the understanding. Okay. So what's wrong if we consult astrologers in the mood of knowing the will of Krishna? No, devotees do not try to, or devotees time does not carry karma. So astrological, the planets do not indicate Krishna's desire for devotees. This is not at all true. So therefore, you don't, Prabhupada never recommended or that devotee and the will of Krishna through astrology. Any of our acharyas have told, the understanding is you cannot understand the will of Krishna. Is will of Krishna so predictable that 10 years, 20 years from now, whatever is going to happen, the astrologer will predict. So then Bhishma Dev would have told Yudhishthir Maharaj, Bhishma Dev would not have told Yudhishthir Maharaj that no one can understand the will of Krishna. He would have told, go to an astrologer and try to understand the will of Krishna. So this is not at all true for devotees. So do planets carry the will of Krishna? Yes, indirectly. They carry karma of those who have not surrendered to them. They do not carry the will of Krishna directly for devotees. Nowhere it is mentioned. Um, so rather, when that act will make us surrender more to Krishna. Uh, when difficulties come, we are supposed to take shelter of Krishna. We are not supposed to go and try to adjust our karma, adjust the situations, and try to make this material world a very good place to live. So this is not true at all. Do you want to ask a follow-up question for this, Balaganesh? Is that satisfying, or do you have a follow-up question? Okay. Okay, next question in the chat box. I heard from some devotees, they tell astrology gives the sign of our future problems. If we know them, we cannot stop them, but we can take precautions so that they can protect bhakti. Well, this sounds nice, but this is not true. They relate this with weather forecast. If we know rain comes, we can carry an umbrella to protect ourselves. Well, our umbrella is always chanting the holy name, irrespective of whether difficulties come or not come. We are supposed to do that. So, what is the umbrella that we are going to carry? Devotional service. So, if danger is coming, what are we going to do? Devotional service. If danger is not coming, what would you do otherwise? Devotional service only. So then, I mean, so this sounds very very logical, but this is not meant for devotees. So this is not meant for devotees at all. Yeah, otherwise our if it was so clear that you know what problems are going to come in your bhakti, then you know it, and then you can take precaution. If it is such a critical thing, then our acharyas would have definitely written about it in their books. As far as I know, whatever writings of Srila Rupa Goswami or Srila Raghunath Das Goswami or Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur or Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur or Srila Prabhupada that I have read, I don't anywhere remember reading that it is very important that devotees try to understand what troubles are going to come ahead in their bhakti. So they should go to an astrologer and find that out so that they can carry the umbrella. I mean, yeah. So this is not at all, this is not true at all. Nowhere our acharyas have mentioned this way. Okay, there is a question here in the chat box again. I got this question as in our scriptures, they seem to have taken that as pramana in some conversations, like Shukadev Goswami mentioning this to Parikshit, Jatayu saying to Lord Ram, predictions of charts to Srila Prabhupada and the other acharyas. Yeah, I mean, of course, these are extraordinary things which the astrologers are given a rare glimpse by Krishna to give such a prediction, but this is not always necessarily true. This is not always necessarily true. I mean, we are not supposed to, we are supposed to look at instance from our acharyas rather than look at some of their life happenings and give our own purport to this. So if that was the purport, then our acharyas would have mentioned it, or the Vartacharyas would have mentioned it. So So what if the astrologer says that he is not able to predict that whether you will practice bhakti or not? What are we going to do? We will give up our endeavor to practice bhakti. So, I mean, so what is the point actually in one sense? So astrology is a science. This is very plain and simple. Astrology is a science that works based on karma. Devotee's life is not controlled by karma. Devotee's life is controlled by Krishna. This is plain and simple. So, follow-up question. So, do we understand that if we have firm in devotional service, we don't need to bother for future trouble? Bhakti Devi will take care of it. We just need to go on our doing our best. Yeah, we don't have to bother about future trouble. Future trouble will come, but that trouble is given by Krishna in order to push us in a direction by which we can take his shelter more seriously. It is not that if people are firm in bhakti, they will not get any trouble. That is not guaranteed. Trouble will come. The purpose is not to stay trouble free, but the purpose is to take shelter of Krishna. So sometimes the means of pushing a devotee to take shelter of Krishna may be trouble. Sometimes the means of pushing a devotee to take shelter of Krishna may be releasing him from troubles. So there is no guarantee that devotees will be trouble free or troubled. The thing is, whatever is needed for the devotee to come closer to Krishna's lotus feet, that will be orchestrated by Krishna. So therefore, there is no guarantee that people will be trouble free. Okay, there is another very nice question in the chat box. Because all of these questions are connected, all of these questions are connected. I'm taking before I take Mother Gail's question. So there is a question in the chat box. If devotee suffering is controlled by Krishna and not karma, why are we asked to think it's because of our past karma? Why are we asked to think that my suffering is due to my past karma? As we see in Tattenu Kampam verse. Well, that's not what that verse says. Tattenu Kampam susamikshamano bunjana eva atmakritam vipakam. Hridvag vapurbir vidadan namaste jiveyo muktipade sadayabhak. What that verse says is that the devotee learns to see that my suffering is due to my own improper practice of devotional service. That is how he sees. The devotee takes personal responsibility for his own suffering. I mean, he need not see it as karma. He sees it as I am responsible for my suffering. I am not taking shelter of Krishna properly. Therefore, Krishna has to put me into trouble to remind me to take shelter, to take his shelter. That is how the devotee sees. He does not see that I am suffering due to my own karma. The word karma may sometimes be used in that way, indicating responsibility. I am responsible for my own suffering. That does not literally mean law of karma. If the devotee's suffering was actually due to law of karma, then why is the devotee hridvag vapurbir vidadan namaste? Why with his heart, words, and body is again and again offering obeisances and gratitude to Krishna? If his suffering is due to his own karma, then why should it lead that devotee to express his gratitude to Krishna? So there is no need. So therefore, Tattenu Kampam verse does not say that actually. I mean, many times we hear it that way, but that is not what that verse Kampam say. It does not indicate that a devotee should see his own suffering as his own karma. No. A devotee takes responsibility for his own suffering by indicating that I must have committed some offenses. I must have been irresponsible in my practice of devotional service. Therefore, Krishna, in order to remind me, get me back on track, therefore he is giving me suffering. That is why even in suffering, the devotee feels gratitude towards Krishna. If it was all happening due to the mechanical arrangement of law of karma, why should it lead to gratitude in the heart of the devotee? So you see here that the devotee feels responsible for his own suffering, but at the same time he sees the hands of Krishna. That is why it leads to gratitude. So responsibility on the devotee's side need not take Krishna's hand away from controlling the devotee's life. So the devotee can simultaneously feel responsible for his own suffering, at the same time see Krishna's hand. And that is what is a devotee expected to see. Is that relevant, Mataji? You can type and let me know in the chat box. Is that okay? Okay. So now let us go to correct. As King Kulashekar says, Yadyad bhavyam bhavatu bhagavan purva karmanurupam. Etat pratyam mama bahumatam janma janmantarepi tvat padamboruha yugagata nischala bhakti rastu. So when King Kulashekar says, Yadyad bhavyam bhavatu bhagavan purva karmanurupam. So purva karmanurupam means according to my past actions, whatever suffering or happiness comes, let it come. So there purva karmanurupam means actions. That does not mean reaction according to law of karma. Nasta dharme na vasunichaye naiva kamopabhoge yadyad bhavyam bhavatu bhagavan purva karmanam. So yeah, so there purva karma does not refer to reaction according to law of karma. There it means whatever suffering I deserve due to my own actions, let me get that. But who is giving that reaction for my improper action? Krishna. That is why he is asking Krishna. Otherwise, he would just keep quiet, because you cannot ask law of karma, because law of karma is like an ATM machine. You cannot go and pacify an ATM machine to give you some money. You swipe your card, if money is there, ATM will give you money. There is no question of pleasing. The very fact that King Kulashekar is requesting, praying, trying to please Krishna through his prayers means he does not believe that his happiness and distress and his future destination is decided by law of karma. It is decided by Krishna. That is the understanding. Okay, Mother Gail.
Well, Hare Krishna Prabhu. I mean, I had an original question, but all these answers sparked so many more questions that I want to clarify. Okay, so this, for one thing, this fact that devotees feel responsible for their own suffering, but they don't attribute it to karmic reaction. So, and when they face trouble as a result of their actions, they are grateful to Krishna because what? They feel that it is by Krishna's arrangement that that they are having to deal with this trouble. Yes, it was due to, is their behavior in the past that what inspired Krishna to arrange for them to be in this trouble? Is what is Krishna's hand when it comes to this trouble that the devotee is facing?
If the devotee is acting in a way which is ruining his bhakti, then by giving suffering, the reckless attitude of the devotee is corrected by Krishna by giving him a reminder that no, you can't afford to act this way. Come back on track and stay fixed in devotional service. That's how the devotee sees it. So, so just a reminder that don't be reckless here. This is not good for devotional service. So, if we are allowed to just keep acting recklessly without any suffering coming, then we may not. Then we may forget Krishna and keep forgetting Krishna. But when suffering comes, naturally the devotee thinks about Krishna and he thanks Krishna. Thank you, Krishna. If not, I would have continued to act recklessly, and I deserve this punishment. And you are so kind that even in punishing me, you are punishing me to get me back on track to reach your lotus feet. That is why it leads to gratitude. Because the devotee acts inappropriately because he gets distracted by his conditionings. So time and again, when Krishna gives some suffering, the futility of pursuing the desires created by conditioning, the devotee gets a reminder of that, and then he remembers Krishna also. And then he thanks Krishna. Thank you, Krishna. If this suffering had not come, I would have just pursued these desires which are born out of my conditioning. By putting your foot down and not allowing me to enjoy it unlimitedly, you're reminding me that this material world is not a fit place to live. You're reminding me that the only thing that is fit to be aspired for is a relationship with you and your lotus feet. So a devotee sees like that.
Yeah, that's clear. And that suffering, that is coming by Krishna's direct arrangement, isn't it? Okay, yeah, that's clear.
I will, before you continue your question, Mataji, there is a very beautiful question that's there in the chat box. I will just take that question. How do we see other devotees suffering? How do we respond to it? Do we see that Krishna wants them to suffer? How do we see? Actually, we have to understand that one of the very prominent ways in which suffering devotees can see the hands of Krishna in suffering is through the compassionate intervention of other devotees. When devotees compassionately intervene and try to help other devotees when they are suffering, that is the most powerful way in which the suffering devotee can see the hands of Krishna. Krishna has put me in suffering and has sent this devotee to help me, to remind me that I should stay fixed in devotional service. So therefore, when devotees see other people suffering, it is the best opportunity to help that devotee see Krishna's hand by passionately trying to help that devotee. We should not think that that person is suffering because Krishna wants him to suffer. I mean, how do we know Krishna wants him to suffer? Because we don't know Krishna's plan. Maybe Krishna wants to put an end to his suffering through you. How are you so sure that Krishna wants the devotee to continue suffering? So that makes no sense actually, right? So Krishna wants the devotee, the suffering devotee, to see his hands even in that suffering situation. So how can I help the devotee see Krishna's hands even in a suffering situation? By helping him, because when he sees a devotee helping, then that suffering devotee will naturally remember Krishna and thank Krishna. Krishna, thank you for sending this devotee. Okay. Yeah. So again, so is my understanding correct? There is a question in the chat box. If some sadhaka devotees are suffering, does it mean that they are doing some mistakes and they are suffering? Not necessarily. It is not necessarily. You cannot conclude that. Krishna, then how would you explain the Pandavas suffering? This is not necessary. Suffering of a devotee is not always given a response to their wrongdoings. Sometimes it may be a means of quickly purifying the devotee, intensify his taking shelter, and immediately take him back to his lotus feet. So when we see other people suffering, we cannot immediately jump to the conclusion that their suffering is because they have done something wrong. But when we are suffering, it is a very safe and devotionally nurturing stance to take that I am suffering because I have done something wrong. That is a very good way of taking. That is a way which can nourish our devotion. But when we see other devotees suffering, we cannot take like that. Their suffering is not, it is not siddhantically right that suffering of a devotee is always due to his wrongdoings. This is not true at all. So when we see other people suffering, we cannot come to such conclusions. Okay. There is another question in the chat box. How about helping a suffering non-devotee? Of course, because if you help a suffering non-devotee, and then that non-devotee will appreciate you, and he will get agyat sukha. Right? You may say, well, the non-devotee is suffering because of his karma. Well, how do you know that the law of karma wants him to suffer? According to law of karma, he has to continue suffering. How do you know? Maybe law of karma wants to put an end to that person's suffering, and you lost an opportunity by helping that devotee. By helping that non-devotee by helping to put an end to that non-devotee suffering. So what will happen? Law of karma accomplish it through some other non-devotee, and that person loses an opportunity to get some agyat sukriti through you. But if you had helped, then that nothing will, for a non-devotee, you are helping him means it is acting according to law of karma only, which means that person deserves help according to law of karma. But because a devotee helped him, additionally he gets some agyata sukha also, and he may come closer to bhakti. So this is how we have to see the suffering of a non-devotee also. The suffering of a non-devotee is a great opportunity for a devotee to help that person get some agyata sukriti. This is how we have to see. So therefore, there is no way a devotee can see suffering of either devotees or non-devotees and remain callous about it. If a devotee sees a devotee suffering, he will go to help. If a devotee sees a suffering devotee, he will go to help. There is no logical philosophy by quoting which we can remain callous. You can neither quote law of karma, nor can you quote the hands of Krishna. You cannot say according to law of karma only he is suffering. How do you know he is supposed to suffer according to law of karma? Maybe it is time for his suffering to end, and you got an opportunity to put an end to his suffering, but you didn't do. And if you say a devotee is suffering according to Krishna, how do you know that Krishna wants his suffering to continue? Maybe Krishna wants to put an end to his suffering. You had an opportunity, you missed it. had an opportunity for Vaishnava Seva. Maybe Krishna wanted to give you an opportunity for Vaishnava Seva by putting that devotee into suffering. You missed that opportunity. So therefore, a devotee, he cannot tolerate anyone suffering. Or even if naturally he is callous, but at least he should know that Krishna would like if that devotee acts compassionate, even though the compassion may not naturally come from the heart, but Krishna will be pleased whether when a devotee sees a non-devotee suffering and he helps, or if he sees a devotee suffering and he helps. Don't use the law of karma or Krishna's desire as an escape route to not help that person. That is not siddhantically right. Okay. Yes, now let's get back to Mother Gail's question. Yes, Mother Gail.
Thank you, Prabhu. One thing you said is the purpose of life is not to become trouble-free, but to take more shelter of Krishna, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this taking more shelter of Krishna, would you say that that's synonymous with the purpose of life is not to become trouble-free, but to increase as a result of that trouble, or let's say you do come into trouble, to become, to feel more love for Krishna. If you're in trouble, the real objective of the trouble is that by going through the trouble, you end up feeling more love for Krishna.
Yes. That is Krishna's plan. Actually, that is Krishna's plan in giving suffering. And if we respond to that plan, if we respond to that situation rightly, actually we'll feel grateful to Krishna. But many times we may not respond in the right way. So that is why we end up bitter. We end up feeling complaining like that.
Yeah, I think the problem is, is not so clear how because most people, many of us, I think, see love as protecting us from trouble, right?
Suffering. Yeah.
And that's why it's a little counterintuitive to say that, by this trouble, we will experience more love for Krishna, as you say, if we respond properly. So, going from point A to point B seems like a little fuzzy there, How is it that by experiencing this trouble that has come into my life, I will, as a result, end up feeling more love for Krishna?
The problem here is there is a presumption here. The presumption is that we have a bird's eye view of the whole situation. Actually, we think we have a bird's eye view of the whole situation. So when we see trouble, we don't see that trouble as a means to save us from a bigger trouble. We are generally very short-sighted that we see that trouble as all in all. We don't see that trouble as a means to protect us from a greater trouble. Actually, Krishna has that bird's eye view of the whole situation. So that presumption that we give the benefit of doubt to our intelligence, actually, more than Krishna benevolence. We think we have figured it out, actually, that I am not supposed to be undergoing this trouble, but I am undergoing. But we don't see that Krishna is putting us into this to save us from a bigger trouble. That if only we can trust Krishna that yes, you are benevolent. I am not able to see that. That will not remove our short-sightedness. But our short-sightedness will not go. It's not that we will eventually start Krishna's plan. That we will never. But we don't have to develop a perfect vision to see Krishna's plan. As long as someone is willing to catch our hands, and we are as long as we are able to trust Krishna. So we don't have to see Krishna. We don't have to develop the ability to see Krishna's plans. We just have to develop faith in Krishna. That's all. That Krishna is benevolent, Krishna is omnipotent, Krishna is omniscient. So what we lack, what we need is not the ability to see Krishna's plans, foresee Krishna's plans. Actually, what we lack is trust in Krishna's omnibenevolence and omnipotence. So if only we work on that, because we cannot work to gain the ability to foresee Krishna's plans, that we will never. A living entity in its constitutional state, whether in the liberated state or in the conditioned state, cannot foresee Krishna's plans. That is impossible. So that is a futile attempt. That is what Bhishma Dev tells Yudhishthir Maharaj. The best thing that the living entity can do to remain stress-free even amidst suffering is to trust Krishna. That is the safest thing to remain stress-free. I mean, of course, this is theory for me also. I do not respond this way all the time. But I am speaking for myself so that I can remind myself. But this is fact. What we lack is trust in Krishna, faith in Krishna. So,
but this trust, it should manifest in the form of what? Continuing our devotional service, not dropping it, despite difficulties, or how should we be manifesting this trust?
I mean, see, manifesting trust. I mean,
Maybe
we have to
depends on
develop
the
it.
situation. I don't know.
Yeah, we have to develop it. I mean, we manifest only what we have. So
Yeah,
what we have naturally gets manifested. The question should be, how do we develop it? Rather than how do we manifest? I mean, whatever is there manifests automatically. So if it is there, it comes out. If it is not there, it can't come out, actually.
Right. So in the face of adversity, what is the proper response to nurture or develop this trust?
Well,
let's say I'm being bombarded with so many, maybe loss of job, sickness, severe sickness in the family. So many adversities are going on at the same time, So in such a situation, what does developing trust look like?
Well, as they say, if you sweat, the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. You have heard this, Madhu?
Yes.
So many times, troublesome situations are the war situations. How much you will bleed depends on how much you have sweated in peace. Which means when things were not so problematic, how much we have invested in good sadhana, how much we have invested in good hearing, how much we have invested in good relationships. So all of that, because these are all faith building things. So otherwise, if we have not invested in these things, suddenly when big suffering comes, there is loss of job, there is relationship issues, and all these things coming at the same. How do I respond with faith? Well, it's not very easy, because when things were good, we did not invest our time and energy in the right direction. So whatever faith we have, only that much faith we can muster. So So therefore, and that is the time. So, but I can tell when you see another person going through this who has not sufficiently invested in all these things, but he's undergoing suffering, and you are a well-intentioned devotee, loving, passionate devotee, then how can you respond to that situation? You can go and help that person, because through the help of a devotee, through the compassion of a devotee, the suffering person can see Krishna's hands. That becomes very easy to see Krishna's hands. So otherwise, the person who has not sufficiently invested in developing that level of faith, when he is put in situation, it becomes difficult only for him. So so therefore, the devotee community is not community, individuals, well-intended, grounded, compassionate individuals should go forward and see other devotees suffering as great opportunities to help them see the hands of Krishna. Once learn to see that hands of Krishna, then that is the greatest wealth, greatest fortune. If that becomes a habit, and second nature, that is what the Tatena Kampam verse says. Bunja eva atma kritam vipakam hridvag vapurbir vidadan namaste. So then that person will express gratitude, profuse gratitude to Krishna, because even in suffering he is seeing Krishna's hands. So this is actually something that we have to, we have to learn to sweat in peace. If we have not done that, then we may end up bleeding more in war. That is my
and this seeing Krishna's hand, learning to see Krishna's hand, means learning to see how Krishna is trying to help us develop our loving relationship with him. Is it?
Yeah. If you remember, we discussed in Nishchaya, we were discussing the purport of Srila Bhakti Rakshak Siddha Swami Maharaj, where he was talking about having faith in Krishna's protection. You remember we were discussing that point. Always having faith that Krishna will protect me. So he was giving the example of the cowherd boys, jumping into the Yamuna, even though knowing that it has been poisoned by Kaliya. I will faith that Krishna will protect me. My friend Krishna is that he will protect me. Like you remember that discussion, Madhu?
Yeah. That's where I was.
So there, in that discussion, if you remember, we discussed that faith comes when we do the first two limbs of surrender properly. Anukulyasa sankalpa pratikulyasa varjanam. Accepting whatever is favorable for bhakti and rejecting whatever is unfavorable for bhakti. If that is actually sweating in peace. So when we sweat in peace, then we will bleed less in war. So when difficult situation comes, then the trust that Krishna's protection is guaranteed. So that is a result of our, this is proper investing. Accepting whatever is favorable and rejecting whatever is unfavorable for bhakti.
I feel that last verse of the Gita, that wherever there is Arjuna and Krishna, there will be victory. That can seem like there won't be trouble, because people generally don't equate victory with trouble,
Well, if you see Arjuna's own life, you cannot read that verse in that way. Arjuna was troubled for most of the time. Externally, they were always in trouble. Krishna was there. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Yatra Partho Dhanurdhara. Arjuna was there, his Gandiva was there, Krishna was there. So if you read that whole thing in that way, Arjuna's own life, does not indicate that at all.
Except for the
Pandavas'
fact
own
that
life,
they won the war, except for the
of
fact.
course, yeah, yeah, but they did lose so many of their loved ones, which deeply troubles. Whatever troubled Arjuna, that I will suffer due to loss of Bhishma, Drona, and relatives, all of them actually died, including Arjuna's own son. So, where was the trouble was there? Yudhishthir almost was killed by Karna, and you know, and Yudhishthir himself ridiculed Arjuna. Arjuna was ready to kill Yudhishthir. Karna almost killed Yudhishthir. He barely saved his life and ran away from there. And Arjuna was ready to kill Yudhishthir. What? And then he did not kill him, but insulted severely. I mean, what more trouble? I mean, one can, imagine for Kshatriya, So, I mean, yeah, that is not what that verse means actually.
So therefore, it seems like, I feel like we need like a paradigm shift in terms of how to understand what a successful, victorious life means.
Yeah.
The victory has to be seen in terms of our relationship with Krishna, not some material
parameters.
Yeah.
True.
Okay, but then in answering one Mataji's question about the one who was in the car accident and she felt like people were taking advantage of her humility or something, and then you gave the example that the snake was not told to not hiss, not bite, but it shouldn't bite, but it should hiss. So in that scenario, right, where that car accident scenario, what would have biting look like?
Well, I mean, I cannot. I mean, that's a very specific thing. That I mean, I cannot tell. I cannot imagine what are the various repercussions and things. In essence, what I meant is, the purpose can be to, reclaim Krishna's money, Krishna's property. It need not be to severely avenge and hurt the other person.
Okay.
So that mood is important. Otherwise, not all the details, what exactly happened was furnished. What are the repercussions? I was not personally there. I cannot exactly comment on that. What exactly should have been the
No, I just want a
response.
general thing. But I think so from your answer, I'm understanding that biting is more like, reacting based on false ego, whereas hissing would be, you react based on devotional service or Krishna's something like that.
Yeah.
And I just want to confirm that I understood properly that, in this ladder, going from spontaneous sense gratification to dutiful or mechanical devotional service to detached devotional service to spontaneous devotional service. So the dutiful or mechanical devotional service, that's the dovetailing part, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to get that one clear. And I think my very last question, it might, we spend so much time on these things, the 5 factors of action that was recapped in the beginning. I feel like, I don't know if you feel like it's too far removed from this discussion now.
No, you can go ahead, Mataji. I mean, anyway, we have covered all the things. You have just one last question. We might as well take that also.
Yeah, this is the last, but it's a few in one, because with these 5 factors of action, I get a few of the actions they seem kind of blurred to me, because, for example, one of the factors is the body, which is the place. If I eat a piece of cake, that the place was my body, it wasn't your body. But the senses are involved. That's another factor. But the senses themselves are part of my body. So the distinction.
Let me clarify there. When I say body, I mean the gross body. When I say senses, I mean the subtle body.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then another blurry thing there is the self-identification. Like for the conditioned soul, their identification is their gross body. And maybe for some people, even the subtle senses. But so what is the distinction there between self-identification and...
I mean, these 5 factors that we are talking about is for the conditioned soul only. So self-identification means the designation. If you are given, let's say, if you are given a service of, let's say, teaching, but you don't, even though you may have the ability to teach, but if you don't see yourself as a teacher, you say, oh, I am a book distributor, or I'm Jari. Why are they asking me to teach? And you may say, and you may not put. So if you see yourself as a teacher, maybe it will enhance your enthusiasm. It will encourage you more and more endeavor to do that act. But if your self-identification is something else, then that will affect your endeavor, and in that sense, it will affect the result also. In that sense, that is self-identification.
Okay, so then, we also understand that the desire of the soul is one of the factors. So I don't see where the desire of the soul fits in here.
Well, this is for the conditioned soul. In the conditioned state, that desire of the soul is completely covered by conditioning. So the soul's desire is not expressed. The soul's desire, the soul does only one thing. The soul just animates uh, uh, this whole gross and subtle body, through which only the conditionings are expressed. So that animation thing, animating the inanimate gross and subtle body, that the soul can do, but the soul cannot express its desire because it is completely conditioned actually.
So, but the let's call it the contaminated desire, isn't that? So this contaminated desire, where is that here? And where is that?
The very fact that he is doing endeavor in that particular direction, it's because he has the desire, right? Fourth is endeavor.
Oh,
the fourth factor is endeavor. So if he does not want to achieve success in that direction, why would he endeavor in that direction?
Okay. Okay. Ooh. Thank you, Prabhu. Finally got to the bottom. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, finally, I think now let's get going. I mean, I don't mind. We could go on and on, but I don't want this. I mean, I definitely want to spend time addressing points and churning, but at the same time, we should also keep moving. Of course, it's not that we are still in the first essay. We have reached the 9th essay, which means we definitely have spent time covering portions. So I mean, no need to press the panic button yet, anyone. Please do not press the panic button, because there will be some sessions where we may spend little more time on Q&A and discussion, and there will be some other days when we will cover more portions. So this will all be, law of averages will even out everything. So please do not mind. No need to press the panic button. I promise you, we will definitely complete book Bhakti Aloka. Just like we completed Harinam Chintamani, we will complete Bhakti Aloka. So no one needs to panic yet. So please do not panic. So anyways, so we will continue the discussion. We were discussing about controlling the urge of the mind, manasa vegam. Okay. So, here Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, it is the duty of a sober person to tolerate the urge of the mind, which means one has to endeavor. One may not have the natural, spontaneous ability to control the mind. The mind may not have become one's friend, but one has to endeavor to say no to the urge of the mind. Until one is habituated to control the urge of the mind, how can one perform devotional service with attention? So, so endeavor to control the urge of the mind till one becomes naturally habituated to control the urge. Only then one can reach the stage of Nishtha. So Nishtha is the stage when one has befriended the mind. Okay. So steady devotional service is possible only when one has befriended the mind. Bandhuratmatmanastasya yenatmai vatmanajitah anatmanastu shatrutve vartet atmeva shatruvat. So he says, Krishna says that if you have controlled the mind becomes your friend. If it is uncontrolled, then it remains your enemy. A materialist sits in the chariot of the mind and never gets relief from its various urges except during sleep. But even during sleep, many thoughts such as good and bad dreams come. In order to regulate the urges of the mind, the rishis have propounded Ashtanga Yoga and Raja Yoga, but that is not the best way. Prabhupada says that those on the path of devotional service can easily regulate the mind by giving the mind the higher taste through the senses. Then the mind can remain without urges. So then Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, if urged towards spiritual objects, the mind is properly engaged and it will not hanker for insignificant subjects. Okay. So if the mind is urged towards spiritual subjects, so that can happen only if the mind is constantly getting spiritual inputs from the senses. So which means senses should get constant spiritual engagement. So many people think that without Ashtanga Yoga, there is no alternative to regulate the mind. But Patanjali Muni has accepted that just as Ashtanga Yoga regulates the mind, Bhakti Yoga can also. So Nishkama Karma Yoga purifies the heart. But so can Bhakti Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga controls the mind. But so can Bhakti Yoga. Jnana Yoga can help one attain self-realization. But so can Bhakti Yoga. So therefore, is there any role that Ashtanga Yoga can play in Bhakti? No. Is there any role that Nishkama Karma Yoga can do in Bhakti? No. Is there any role that Jnana Yoga can do in Bhakti? No. Nothing. Bhakti is self-sufficient. Meditation on the Supreme Lord as propounded by Patanjali is not pure devotional service. Rather, it is Sakama Bhakti or motivated Bhakti. It is not Anyabhilashita Shunyam, nor is it Jnana Karma Dhyana. Neither is the goal clean, nor is the means clean. So it is certainly not pure devotional service. If devotional service is performed for the purpose of regulating the mind, then it is certainly not devoid of material desires. Favorable cultivation of devotional service in relationship to Krishna is the real meaning of pure bhakti. We do not perform devotional service to control the mind. Not that it is not possible to control the mind through devotional service. Mind control automatically happens through practice of devotional service. But we do not perform devotional service for controlling the mind. If that is the purpose, then that bhakti is not pure bhakti. Therefore, we perform devotional service to establish a relationship with Krishna, to develop our love towards Krishna, to reawaken our love towards Krishna. For that, we perform devotional service. And in doing that, automatically the mind gets controlled. Therefore, whenever pure devotional service is performed, joyfulness of the mind automatically arises from amongst extraneous fruits. So that is why if you see, when devotional service is performed, automatically there is kleshagni, there is destruction of suffering, material suffering also happens, and there is some shubhada, auspiciousness, certain auspiciousness through material results also comes. Srimad Bhagavatam 7:132 states, Tasmat kenapyupayena mana Krishna niveshaya. Somehow or other, one must consider the form of Krishna very seriously. If one follows this instruction, then the mind will be engaged at the lotus feet of Krishna and it will not easily wander into other subjects. So mind should have some scope for Krishna conscious meditation. It could be service, it could be japa, it could be the form of the Lord, it could be the qualities of the Lord, it could be the pastimes of the Lord, something connected to Krishna. For the practitioner, the urge of the mind is regulated by pure cultivation of favorable devotional service and relationship to Krishna. This is such a most important statement. How do you call the urge of the mind? For the practitioner, he is not even talking about pure devotee, he is talking about practitioner. He is not talking about perfected devotee, he is talking about pure devotional practitioner. The urge of the mind is regulated by pure cultivation of favorable devotional service in relationship to Krishna. This is how mind can be regulated. By carefully meditating on the subject, one can know the inherent differences between yoga and bhakti. This is what Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about, controlling the urge of mind. Any quick discussion points, comments, questions before we move on to the next topic? Okay, if there is none, then we will continue our discussion. The next theme, there is one question. Radha Bhavini Mandir.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Tanda Pranam. Thank you for very nice detailed explanation about the law of karma rather. Can you also mention about the analogy of ATM? I just got a bit lost during that time. Would you mind repeating that if it's okay?
Yeah. So I said Krishna is not like the ATM. Law of karma is like the ATM. You know, if you have if you have money in your account, when you swipe the card, you will get it. But you know, King Kulashekar says, Nasta dharme navasunichaye naiva kamopabhoge yadyad bhavyam bhavatu bhagavan pakarmanu rupam. He says, whatever I deserve according to my actions, let me get it. But then he also says, etat prartyam mama bahumatam janma janmantarepi tvat padamboruha yugagata nischala bhaktirastu. He says that he is also offering prayers to Krishna, to pacify Krishna, to please Krishna. You cannot offer prayers to the ATM. You cannot please the ATM and get what you want. So law of karma is like the ATM. You get what you have. But Krishna is not like that. You can offer prayers and try to please Krishna. That was the context in which I was telling that even though King Kulashekar is telling Yadyad bhavyam bhavatu bhagavan purva karmanu rupam. whatever I deserve. So Purva Karmanurupam does not mean according to law of karma. It means whatever I deserve according to my actions. That just means that he is willing to take responsibility for his actions rather than accepting the law of karma itself. That's what I meant. Is that okay, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Mother Gail.
Yeah, just to confirm my understanding, controlling the mind is the goal of Ashtanga Yoga, whereas in Bhakti Yoga, it's a means to an end, where the end is, love for Krishna. Is that correct?
No. In Bhakti Yoga, controlling the mind is neither the means nor the end. In Bhakti Yoga, control of mind is incidental. While trying to please Krishna and so in Bhakti Yoga, the goal is to please Krishna, the means devotional service, and control of the mind incidentally happens when we try to engage in devotional service sincerely. An incidental happen.
But we're always exhorted to control the mind in order to focus the mind's attention on the mantra.
Yeah. So that is, I mean, you can see it as controlling the mind. I can see it as an endeavor to properly practice devotional service.
Yeah, but that endeavor involves controlling the mind.
Yeah, but that controlling the mind means to endeavor to properly practice devotional service. So how do you control your mind? By trying to focus on the mantra. That is devotional service only.
I don't know. Some seem like it's kind of like splitting hairs, no?
It's not, and you don't have to allow to split your hairs. It's just I mean
because to perform devotional service properly, you have to try to control the mind.
Well, what I'm telling is that automatically happens, but the mean to attain that, even if you may say that it is an intermediate goal to control the mind, which I agree to some extent, the means of doing that is to diligently engage in devotional service. So diligent engagement in devotional service by giving constant conscious engagement to the senses, the mind gradually starts getting controlled. But still the goal remains to establish a relationship with Krishna, and the means remains devotional service. And in between, when the mind gets controlled, then it reaches the stage of Nishtha. But then again from there, again you have to engage in devotional service only, then it reaches Ruchi, then again you have to engage in devotional service only, then it reaches Asakti, then again you engage in devotional service, it reaches Bhava, and then Prema, like that. So the means is devotional service, the end is Prema, which is also devotional service only actually. So, and mind control in this whole endeavor is an incidental byproduct. It happens.
But do you not agree that we are always being, how should I say, encouraged, control the mind, so that it doesn't get engaged in all kinds of material things?
Well,
so that we can focus on Krishna instead.
Yeah, I see that whole instruction as control the mind means I translate it as, I decode the instruction as engage the senses in Krishna's service. Because that is the way of controlling the mind.
Yes.
And engaging the senses in Krishna is devotional service.
Yes. Okay.
Like that.
Okay. And just one last thing is you've been saying Nishkam Karma Yoga, the goal for that is purifying the heart. And when we say purifying the heart, it means getting rid of any desires for a selfish enjoyment, is it?
No. Getting rid of desire for material enjoyment. But a Nishkama Karma Yogi has desire for selfish enjoyment in the form of liberation.
So purifying the heart means
Purifying the heart of all kinds of material desires. Desires which can be fulfilled within the real realm.
I thought that's what I said. No?
Yeah, but it does not in liberation.
Excuse
Desire
me?
for liberation, it does not involve liberation. Desire for liberation. The desire for liberation is not material, but selfish. Isn't it? Isn't the desire for liberation selfish?
Yes.
Yeah, but a Nishkama Karma Yogi has that desire. That is his goal.
Okay, so you're saying that purifying the heart means getting rid of all bodily desires.
Yeah. Yes.
Mhm.
You cannot say that Nishkama Karma Yogi is not free of selfishness. In fact,
Right. Yes.
in fact, they exhibit the most concentrated form of selfishness in the form of desire for liberation.
Why do you call
Just
that
like
concentrated? Why is that called concentrated form of selfishness?
because they are absolutely absorbed in the mood of I don't want to suffer. So the desire to escape suffering is more absorbing than the desire to enjoy. That is why fear is a more consuming emotion than the desire for sense gratification. So therefore, even fear and sense gratificatory desires, both are selfish desires. But fear has a more profound ability to come our mind than the desire for sense gratification. So therefore, if you see these people who are aspiring after liberation, they can do tremendous form of austerities to somehow get that state of, even though austerity is severe suffering, but they do all of that so that they can ultimately escape suffering. So unless they are so concentrated and with deep concentration, they are absorbed in that goal, not be able to do such sacrifices. So that is why the desire for liberation is much more concentrated form of selfishness than actually desire to enjoy in this material world. That is why it is the biggest obstacle for bhakti. Like that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Correct. Okay. Now we still have about 15 minutes. Let's try to address the next point, which is Krodha Vegam, which is the third one. So he says, to restrain the urge of anger is compulsory for those who are thirsty for devotional service. Yeah, because anger is very dangerous, because it definitely leads to offenses actually. So this is very, very important actually. Anger arises when a man's lust is unfulfilled. Kamat krodho vijayate. Okay. When one is angry, the result gradually leads one to ruination. Yeah. Anger is deadly actually. Anger is deadly. it sort of blinds a person, and the result is very devastating actually. So we have to stop many just before anger actually. Because once it reaches anger, then destruction is guaranteed actually. It is said in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Atayeva Shanta. Atayeva, therefore. Shanta, he is peaceful. Why? Because he is Nishkama. The opposite of Shanta is actually angry. Angry and restless. The devotee is not angry and restless because he is Nishkama, he is free of Kama. Because the devotee of Lord Krishna is desireless, he is peaceful. No insignificant lust can remain in the heart of one who relishes pure devotional service. Therefore, there is no possibility of anger in his mind. Of course, I mean, we do have residual anger in the form of anarthas, because lust is there. Lust as an anartha is there, so anger as an anartha is inevitable. Those whose devotional service is motivated cannot conquer anger, because whenever that motivation is curtailed, so here motivation means abhilasha. Okay, so whoever has anya abhilasha, whenever that is stopped, that will lead to anger. But devotees, practicing pure devotees, they cannot become angry because of their abhilasha, because they don't have any material abhilasha, but they can become angry because they may possess lust as an anartha. They may possess lust as an anartha, right? So therefore, anger as an anartha is very natural. They will get. So, but when anartha nivritti is accomplished, then the devotee does not become angry, right? So it is not possible to conquer anger by intelligence alone. It is not possible to conquer anger by intelligence alone. In a very short time, attachment for sense enjoyment overcomes the function of the intelligence and gives anger place in its kingdom. So unless lust is addressed by favorable engagement of the senses, there is no question of controlling anger. Prabhuji, how do I restrain myself when anger comes? That's a that's a very that's a very difficult question actually. It's very difficult to control anger. It's even very difficult to control lust. Actually, we have to control it before that actually. Favorable engagement of the senses. This is very critical. It is seen in the song of the Avanti Brahmana from Srimad Bhagavatam that he was able to quickly control anger. Okay, we are going to see that now. So, there it is mentioned, Tam vai pravayasam bhikshum avadhutam asajjanaha drishtva paryabhavan bhadra bhakvibihi paribhutibihi. O kind Uddhava, seeing him as an old dirty beggar, rowdy persons would dishonor him with many insults. Kechit trivenum jagruhu eke patram kamandalum Pitam chayake akshasutram cha kantam chirani kechana pradaya cha punastani darshitani adadur munehe. Some of these persons would take away his sannyasi rod, and some would take away his which he was using as a begging bowl. Some took his deerskin seat, some took his chanting beads, and some would steal his torn ragged clothing. Displaying these things before him, they would pretend to offer them back, but would then hide them again. Take it like that. But then when he would go to take it, they would, take it back. Annam cha bhaiksha sampannam bunjanasya sarittate mutrayanti cha papishtaha shthivanti asya cha murdhani. When he was sitting on the bank of a river, about to partake of the food that he had collected by his begging, such sinful rascals would come and pass urine on it, and they would dare to spit on his head. Shipantike avajananta esha dharma dvaja shatah kshina vitta imam vrittim agrahit swajanojitah. They would criticize and insult him, saying, "This man is just a hypocrite and a cheat. He makes a business of religion simply because he lost all his wealth and his family threw him out." Evam sa bhautikam gam daivikam daihikam chayat bhoktavyam atmanodishtam praptam abudyata. The Brahmana understood that all his suffering from other livings, from the higher forces of nature and from his own body, was unavoidable, being allotted to him by providence. So, anger comes when there is a sense of entitlement and a perception of justice. Anger comes when a person feels that I am entitled to enjoy. I don't deserve to suffer. Anger comes from a sense of entitlement and a perception of injustice. Because I'm entitled and it has been taken away unjustly. Therefore, one becomes angry. But this Avanti Brahmana was very, very deeply rooted in the understanding that I am suffering because of my karma. And a devotee sees it as I am suffering because of my own wrong deeds, and Krishna is kindly putting me in this situation so that I can take his shelter. So that way, he does not angry. Okay. So the Avanti mendicant, the Avanti Brahmana, then spoke the following verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. Etam sa astaya paratmanishtam adhyasitam purvatamair maharshibhi aham tarishyami durantaparam tamo mukundangri nishevayaiva. So he says, I shall cross over the insurmountable ocean of nations. Etam sa astaya paratmanishtam, by being firmly fixed in the service of the lotus feet of Krishna. So his goal was very clear. His goal was very clear. The purpose was what? To fix in serving Krishna. Suffering or no suffering. The desire to serve Krishna, it was very fixed. So this was approved by the previous acharyas who were fixed in firm devotion to the Lord, Parama, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Aham tarishyami durantaparam tamo mukundam nishevayeva. I shall cross over the insurmountable ocean of nations by firmly fixed in the service of the lotus feet of Krishna. And adhyasitam purvatamair maharshibhi. This was approved by all the previous acharyas. Etam, who were all astaya paratmanishtam, who were completely fixed in their service to Krishna. They were approved. So he was very fixed in his goal. So therefore, he did not have material attachments. So when material attachments were taken away, he did not become angry. So the means of adding anger is to address lust. But to address lust, again, one has to practice devotional service. Okay, this is developing the virtue of being anger free can come only when adjustment happens on the level of the modes of material nature, which happens only when one practices devotional service. But one can one can, by being fixed in the goal, by developing a proper appreciation of the goal of life, one can overcome anger. One can actually save oneself from acting angrily. Even though the urge of anger may push that person, one can choose not to respond to that urge by valuing actually the goal of life. When one is very clear about the goal of life, one need not become angry. One may feel angry from inside, but one knows that if I act angrily, it will cause offenses, and this offense will ruin my devotions. So even though anger is there inside, I will not express that anger so that my devotional service does not get ruined. So by developing an appreciation, even though by practice of bhakti, internal purification may not have been accomplished, still one can choose to act uh, uh, without anger, even though one may be feeling angry inside. If one has sufficient appreciation of the goal, and if one has clear understanding of how acting angrily can ruin that goal, ruin that achievement of that goal, that is good enough. This paratmanishta, being firmly fixed service of the lotus feet of Krishna, is sometimes followed by Sanaka, and sometimes sannyasis like Sanaka and Sanatan. In both circumstances, the paratmanishta is this. Without this paratmanishta, one cannot cross the insurmountable ocean of nations. Paratmanishta, etam sa astaya paratmanishtam. Paratmanishta means being fixed in devotion. If one is not fixed in devotion, one cannot overcome anger. So the solution in one sense is to become fixed in anger, fixed in devotion. So service to Lord Mukunda is the only shelter one will be delivered by accepting that. We can clearly see from this song of the Avanti Brahmana that it is impossible to cross the ocean of cross the material ocean by the process of love. By unflinching devotion to Krishna, everything is achieved. One who can control urges of speech, mind, and anger by devotional service is called Dhira. So the ultimate solution is engaging the senses in Krishna's service. It all boils down to that, and appreciating the goal of our life. So when this is there, then it is possible to control anger. I know there might be some questions, comments, but I don't want to delay devotees. Already a few have dropped out. So we will try to start on time and end on time, even though we may take questions and discussion points in between, but we will try to stick to the starting time and ending time. I am sure devotees may have some questions. Please take 1 week to keep thinking about these questions, refine your questions, and next time when we meet, please make sure that you present your thoughts, reflections, and questions, and we will definitely do a nice journey. So till then, you have a pleasant week ahead and the weekend ahead, and we will meet again next Wednesday. So thank you all very much for your patience and your enthusiastic participation. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Shri Bhaktya Loka ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.